All right, so welcome officially to the Zoom room. Really nice to see you again, John. Thanks for joining us. So let's jump into today's quote and bit of teaching around that, and that'll lead us nicely into today's lesson. So give me a moment to share my screen. And then, John, maybe for a change, if you can read the daily quote.
Yeah.
From this one's from Meister Eckhart. He was a 13th century German Catholic theologian, friar, philosopher, and mystic. So he was quite, very mystic. He rubbed people up the wrong way because it wasn't traditional church doctrine, but he is what one would call a Christian mystic. So if you can read that quote.
Yes, great quote. Above all else, know this. Be prepared at all times for the gifts of God. Be ready always for new ones. God is 1,000 times more ready to give than we are to receive.
Yeah, and if you translate that into pure formless awareness of perfect love, so read it again with God translated and to see how that resonates.
Above all else, know this. Be prepared at all times for the gifts of pure formless awareness and be ready always for new ones. But pure formless awareness of perfect love is 1,000 times more ready to give than I am to receive.
Hmm. And so it's this awareness that gives us all these gifts. He's pointing us, God is just the placeholder that he's talking of. He uses as a pointer to this fundamental awareness that come from the eternal and infinitely abundant presence he calls God, this awareness. These gifts don't necessarily take the form of money and material things, although these can be temporary expressions of this universal source of abundance, but they're just reflections. Directly, rather, these gifts that he's talking about are states of being, such as love, peace, happiness, gratitude, and it is these states consistently experienced that can create quite miraculous changes on the level of form. So these miracles, the Course calls them, are always truly helpful for your spiritual growth and well-being because of their source, which is only loving and therefore beneficent to all its creations or extensions that naturally include you. So if you look at the question of material abundance, because some people say, well, this is practicing this going to, help my financial situation? Often we think of abundant life as, financial, when it's not really. But if material abundance will advance your spiritual growth by helping you to learn that your thoughts and emotions are powerful creative forces that express the creativity and abundance of their source, then that's what you'll experience. On the other hand, you may need to let go of some attachment to the material world by connecting with this abundant presence that transcends it on a deeper level, in which case you may well experience material things being taken away and apparent scarcity on the level of form. So that can also work. Now, often people, when they start on a spiritual path, they find a lot of stuff goes away. And they go, well, hang on, that's not what I signed up for. I thought I was going to get abundance. But it doesn't work that way. If that happens, it doesn't mean that the gifts of God have been withdrawn from you and you're being punished for your sins. That could be a traditional religious viewpoint of what's happening, or creating poverty by having a scarcity mindset. That could be a New Age perspective on the matter. But instead, it means that these changes are actually just helpful for your spiritual growth, as they force you to look at some of your false egoic beliefs and let them go. And so it's all about going, well, what's actually helpful? And if it's happening in your life, then it's helpful. By definition, it's happening for a reason. And your job is to see that, is actually all the changes in your life, as Yeshua says at some point, are helpful. And when you understand that in the development of trust, then you go on to the second stage. So let's read that. Elaine, if you can read that. That's a quote from the section 4A of the Manual for Teachers. And this is about trust, the 6 stages in the development of trust. And this is the first stage talking about in this paragraph.
First, they must go through what might be called a period of undoing. This need not be painful, but it usually is so experienced. It seems as if things are being taken away, and it is rarely understood initially that their lack of value is merely being recognized. How can lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where he must see things in a different light? He is not yet at a point at which he can make the shift entirely internally, and so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. When the teacher of God has learned that much, he goes on to the second stage.
Yeah. So in other words, don't misinterpret losing material things as a symbol of scarcity and punishment to justify fear and guilt in your mind. Actually, it's an essential part of this process of spiritual awakening, which is what the development of trust is. It's Yeshua's take on this journey of awakening. And that's a mistake a lot of people make. They go, well, I've gone on a spiritual path and I'm supposed to have abundant life, and I'm just losing everything. But actually, these changes are always helpful, and only when the person has learned that do they go on to the second stage. Okay, how is this helping me to heal my mind, to free myself of egoic attachments? And when they have learned that, then they're ready to go to the next stage. Whereas if you misinterpret it as, well, I'm just losing, and all that scarcity comes in, that shuts you off from true abundance, which is a deeper connection with the source of all abundance and the love, peace, and joy and gratitude that it's gifts to you. The seeming taking away the material things you valued is designed to help you let go of valuing what is untrue and start valuing only what is true, which are the infinite eternal states of being. And that opens you up to an experience of a different kind of so-called mystical inner abundance. This was the experience of all the founders of the world's major religions: Abraham, Krishna, Buddha, Yeshua, Muhammad, Martin Luther. All had mystical experiences that inspired them to do the great things they did. So mystical experiences behind all the major religious traditions. Abraham Maslow, who's the American psychologist who came up with the famous hierarchy of needs that included what he called peak experiences at the top of the hierarchy, only changed the name to peak experiences because of the resistance of some of his peers in the world of psychological academia to the idea of mystical experience. But he was adamant that a peak experience is just identical to a mystical experience, and would have preferred using the term mystical experience if it weren't for this resistance. That he didn't want stopping the spread of his theory, so he just changed it to peak experiences. But he recognized that the peak experience was a spiritual experience, and that profoundly changed the minds of the people experiencing it, and often their entire lives. So I've included a diagram, and there's also a video if you want to go into the 8 stages of the expanded hierarchy. So most people think Maslow's hierarchy of needs was his just 5 levels, but the 8 stages were his expanded model, which he came up with in the last couple of years of his life, and then he passed away. So he didn't have much time to put it out there and teach it. So this expanded hierarchy starts with the basic physiological needs, so food and drink, shelter, that kind of thing. Then safety needs. I need to feel safe. I need to feel part of a community, of a tribe. Then belonging and love needs. So that's the need to be in a family, in a society, and feel loved and cared for. Then esteem needs. So we have the need for our own individual self-esteem and growth is part of that. Then he included, so those were the first four in the original hierarchy. And these are called deficiency needs. These are like, I'm feeling deficient, but if I do something else and change something externally, I'll get my need met. As soon as you go into cognitive needs, you're in the area of growth. So you start to grow. Cognitive is like need for intellectual stimulation, for instance, aesthetic needs, that's art, culture, music, and so on. And then self-actualization, which was the top of the tree in his previous hierarchy, 5-level hierarchy. But then he put at the top of the pyramid what he called transcendence, which would be equivalent to a peak experience. So that's going beyond any need to grow. And at transcendence, you simply are. You merge back into your source. That in Course in Miracles terms would be a revelatory state. And that's beyond self-actualization, because self-actualization still implies I need to grow. I'm not quite, self-actualized yet. So I need to work and I need to learn, and I need to improve, and I need to grow into something better. At transcendence, you arrive and you say, I am that I am. And I realize that, and I rest in that beingness. So he recognized from all the spiritual traditions that transcendence was the highest state, and the peak experience gave you access to that transcendent level, which was above. In his original model, he had peak experiences above self-actualization, and then he just formalized it and made it into transcendence, which would then incorporate the peak experience or the mystic experience. Yeah, so any questions on Maslow's model? If you want to go deeper into it, there's quite a good video. It's about a 9-minute video where she goes into it in more depth. But what you start seeing is that whether it's Maslow or Ken Wilber has a model, Spiral Dynamics has a model, there's many of these developmental models. They all really are saying the same thing. They slice and dice the journey in different ways, but they all end up in the same transcendent state. Compare that model. Let's just do a quick comparison. So have a look: physiological safety, belonging, and love, then esteem, cognitive, aesthetic, self-actualization, transcendence. Another framework was created by David Hawkins. That's in your course manual as the map of consciousness on page, where are we? It's page 20 of your manual. So if we look at that, you can see parallels, can't you? It's not dissimilar. At the lower levels, these are all deficiency needs. These are negative states. And then once you hit about 200, halfway up the scale, it starts getting positive. You're still in, growth needs and optimism, trust. But then at these higher levels, love, joy, peace, and enlightenment, it becomes transcendent, and it transcends all of the lower states and the needs that are implicit in it. And so, however you slice it and dice it, it's actually ends up in the same place, a transcendent state or an enlightened state, which he called ineffable pure consciousness. We call it pure formless awareness of perfect love. At that level, words don't really matter anymore. It's just pure experience, which is what Yeshua is pointing us to.
I had just stay on that one for a moment, John, because I went with my cousin's wife to see her mother this afternoon. She's in a nursing home. She's 99, and she's laying in bed, and she's got 6 sons and daughters, and mentally she's still there, but physically she's going. But what struck me was her fear of being left alone. She didn't, she's in a subtle way, she kind of pressurizes her daughters to constantly be in attendance.
Yeah.
And I guess what she's doing, she's kind of slipped down that pyramid back to a very whatever stage she got to in life, she's kind of slipped back down.
Which can happen.
Yeah.
Fear.
And she's having nightmares as well, which I kind of feel for her, because having nightmares at 99 is kind of, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously, she hasn't resolved a lot of these issues, and so now they're coming up. And of
Yeah,
course, fear of death. She probably doesn't want to be alone because, like, well, I'm clearly life is coming to an end. I'm at the end of life stage. And if I haven't reconciled my mind with my true awareness, it's quite scary. Okay, well, I'm gonna potentially die. What happens? Is she religious at all? Does she have any faith?
yeah, she is. She is. Well,
She's Christian,
she's a traditional Roman
traditional
Catholic.
Christian. Yeah, yeah. But the challenge with that is God is often very remote. It's like,
Yeah.
God, Jesus, save me. Remember, a friend of mine, Patricia, you may have met, she's a course student. She was saying her I think it was just her father-in-law
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
was dying, and he kept saying, Jesus, come and get me. Jesus, kom haal my Afrikaans. Jesus, and she said to him, you got to let it go. Just let go. He's not going to save you. Just let go and trust. And then he stopped saying that, and he found some peace. It
Yeah.
was like, okay, just let go and drop in to your own deeper awareness. It's always been there. So find that the peace of God that transcends all understanding, that surpasses all understanding, as it was called in the Bible by Paul, and that's at the transcendent level. Peace comes at 600, just below enlightenment,
Yeah.
and it's way beyond the fears and the desires and all of this stuff. So our job is ideally, while we still have full we fully compos mentis, we physically reasonably strong and fit, use that time to climb the ladder and to establish yourself at a high level, a higher state, and resolve all of this stuff. So when you come to, if you ever get to 99, and it's end of life stage, it's all resolved. There's no fear anymore. It's just like, I'm just gonna gracefully let go of this personal identity, of this life, of this body, and surrender into my true awareness. And I'm not really going anywhere because I'm actually already established in that awareness. When Ramana was dying, and all his disciples were going, "Oh, Master, you're going to die," and because they were still attached to form. He said, "Have you learned nothing? I've been teaching you all these years. I'm not a body. I'm not really going anywhere. I'm awareness itself, so I can't die. You just won't have, the physical form that you call Ramana, and you won't be able to speak to me in the flesh, but my awareness remains. I can't die. Surely you've realized that by now, after all these years of my teaching." So he's not concerned at all about his body having cancer and dying. It's like, well, I'm just pure awareness, and the body is really irrelevant to that. So ideally, we should get to that state of awareness when we finally get to our end of life stage and the body is failing, as it inevitably will. And then it's really not a problem. It's just, oh, well, actually it's quite nice just to let go of this body. It's like an old car that's, had its day, and it's done its service, but it's time to let it go. It's time to put it on the scrap heap,
Yeah.
and transcend. It's a vehicle that served its purpose. It's taking you where it needs to go, and then you let it go, and you go back home into your true awareness, and there's no pain or suffering or drama in that. It's just it's a gentle letting go and surrender into the blissful state of ineffable being that is your home. I mean, what's painful or what's to be resisted about that? But you have to have done the spiritual work to be prepared for that. If you haven't, then I think it can be quite difficult, the end of life stage. A lot of resistance, and you're scared. I mean, where am I going? My body is dying. This life that I've valued is dying, and what's going to happen to me? And if you don't know what's going to happen, then it can be quite scary. And then the fear, and then obviously she's wanting people with her because that makes her feel more comfortable on the level of form. So, okay, well, I feel like I can cope better when I have people with me. Because alone, you see, then what does she do? She has to face her fear
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
And maybe she's avoided doing that her whole life. So now it's like, well, as you say, difficult to do when you're 99. Rather start doing that when you a lot younger and maybe more capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Which is why we practice. We're talking earlier in our expression about practice. Practice, practice, practice. Practice confronting those fears. Practice looking at your stuff and letting it go, which most people don't do. And that's the best training you can possibly have, the best preparation for your end of life stage. Ideally, you've resolved everything by that stage. And it's just, you see it, people are really awakened towards the end of their life. There's just such a beautiful, graceful presence about them. And there's no resistance anymore. They've surrendered. And the light of their true awareness kind of shines through. And they're not holding on to the body anymore, onto life and, their old identity. That's all just transcended. And they just, they're already there. They're not really, as Ramana said, I'm not really going anywhere. I'm already there. That's ideally where we want to be. So just interesting. I don't know if you've ever watched this interview, but it's quite an interesting interview with three different people from different spiritual paths: a Benedictine monk, a Sufi mystic, and a Jewish rabbi. And they talked about what a mystical experience means from these different perspectives. And that's where I actually discovered what Abraham Maslow meant when he meant a peak experience. They discuss it in there, as well as other things. And you'll see some of their own resistance. And this guy, the Benedictine monk, talks about the ego, and you need ego in your life. And I was like, no, it's not really a non-dual perspective, but that's just his understanding. The Jewish rabbi was a bit more in his intellect and his mind, and the Sufi mystic was really interesting. I thought she really got it, because much more experiential practice. But listen to the video and decide for yourself. So that brings us to our session, and in good preparation really for today's workbook lesson. So it's in fact we don't need a Word document. Let's just practice here. So let me start the recording. Give me a moment, and then we'll read this review lesson 178. Just 3 key ideas really. So what's happened to my screen? Okay, you can still hear me, yeah?
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
Yeah.
Just I can't see the screen. That's problematic.
It's gone black.
I've got a black screen, yeah. Not good at all. Okay. I think I might just need to reboot. Because if I can't see the screen, I can't really operate. And you can't see either, yeah?
No, black.
No.
Okay, so let's rejoin. You guys stay connected. Give me a minute. I'm just going to reboot. Then
Yeah.
it won't drop the YouTube live stream. You can just have a chat about whatever. Elaine's actually in the UK at the moment, John. I'll reboot, and then I'll come back in. It might take a minute or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so see you shortly. I'm just going to cut off now.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
See you shortly.
So you okay, Elaine?
Yes, yeah, no, well, I'm pet sitting in Northumberland. It's really nice. Weather's just really, very nice. But I'm going to St Albans on the 24th for 10 nights, and then Glastonbury for 3 nights.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if there was some sort of a gathering that might be happening or not. Was Jono going to organise something, or am I just too far away from everybody?
Well, I haven't heard about anything.
No, right. It was just, I did mention I was going to be there, but whether Jono will be organising something or not, I don't know.
Okay. I know we are. We're going to be in France for a few days there.
Oh, right. When do you go there, John?
Yeah, I think we go around about that.
The 24th-ish.
Yeah, around about that time actually.
Ah, right. Yeah. Oh, well. Well, another time then, I'm sure. Meet up for a chat. No, yeah.
How long are you there till? How long are you when you how
Third,
long?
10 nights. 10 nights, yeah.
10 nights. What, 10 nights from the 24th?
From the 24th, yes. Yeah.
That takes us into early September.
Yeah.
There might be a possibility there.
Oh, well. Well, you never know. Yeah, so we'll be in touch. Yeah, 'cause it'd be nice to meet up with yourself and
Yeah,
Sue.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and lots to talk about. The course is just so full of wisdom. So
Yeah.
full of it, isn't it? It's yeah. I'm pleased to be on the journey, actually. Yeah. Because
That's good.
yeah, because the last couple of weeks I haven't done much practice at all, and it's interesting. It does show.
Yeah,
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 yeah. So so that's when I am grateful for being on
yeah. I
this
mean,
journey.
I know I need a certain threshold. Yeah.
Yeah, and just get back into the real thoughts rather than the Elaine thoughts.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes. Which they're not all bad, but they're just a bit habitual and yeah, like an
yeah,
autopilot.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So it'd be nice for more members to come on, but hey ho, it's a specialist thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's just nowhere like it really, because I mean, I follow a lot of like the YouTube and there's Moji and Adi Shanti and Louise Kay is very good. She's really good.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But how would you put it though? They just seem to go straight for the awareness. And I like this course because it's a process that
Yeah,
knows the ego so well.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So this is why I would always keep returning back to this. Yeah. Oh,
All right, I'm back. Sorry.
no.
Computer just had to do a bit of updating there as well. So it's okay. I got put the lights on, got some tea,
I was
etc.
just discussing with John about me going down south and whether we were all meeting up, but it looks as though it may be well, John's going to France and
Okay.
you might be going to South Africa, so another time.
Well, I'll be coming. Yeah, I'm gonna go to South Africa probably next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'll be a sort of London area. We could meet up there. But you're up in Newcastle still, so it's a bit
Yeah,
far for you.
it's the 24th. The
Hmm.
24th of August. I'm in St Albans, and you're in
Okay.
South Africa, and John's in France. So
Yeah.
never mind. Not meant to be. Another time.
Maybe on the way back. I'll be coming back first week of September, probably 2 weeks, fourth, somewhere around there. So if you're still
Yeah,
around, or you're heading back to
I'll be in Glastonbury from the 3rd to the 6th. You know
of
when you're there,
September.
though. Yeah, you're not nowhere near. Knows John.
Hmm. No,
Oh well.
Glastonbury is not far from Shaftesbury. It's about an hour's drive from Shaftesbury.
Oh well. You never
Yeah,
know. Oh well.
yeah,
You never know.
yeah. So if I'm around, yeah, I'll probably be coming back first week of September. So I'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Come visit. Yeah. Okay. So let's jump into teaching. Where are we? Okay. So start again. Discard. Okay. All right, so show my screen. Yeah, this is another review lesson, 178. So let's read it in sequence. The idea is to read the kind of key idea that runs through these reviews, and then the first review idea, and then the key idea again, and then second review. So then if you can read that that first idea in the original and alternative.
Yeah. God is but love, and therefore so am I. My source is only love, and therefore so am I. And the
So
rest?
yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Any thoughts? And we've done this for the last 8 days. But any further thoughts?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, the source is I resonate more with that than God.
Hmm.
God's nice as well. I have no problems with God.
Well, I think the value of saying God is only love is that it makes clear what God is. I mean, this is essential correction of a lot of misperceptions around God. God is only love. God is loving awareness. But if you make it my source, it becomes very personal. So my source to God is not something outside of me. My source is only this loving awareness, and therefore so am I. Therefore so am I. And the logic of this is obvious. If this is my source, if my source is only love, therefore I must also be love. How can I be different from my source? The ego's delusion is that you can be different from your source, but that's not true. You can't be different from your source. You are what God created or extended you to be and nothing else. It's not possible to be anything else. That's that impossible idea that you can be something other than your source. What your source is the delusion of the ego, which just needs to be looked at and corrected. So it makes it very explicit. My source is only love, and therefore so am I. That's a pure statement. And this statement is the entire truth of the Course. It's the merging of the Father with the Son, or the extension with its source, in that one sentence. And if you contemplate it deeply, it can take you into the mystic experience we talked about, of actually experiencing the love of God as your own most innermost awareness. So that prepares us nicely then for the first idea, which is a review idea, was lesson 165. So John, if you can read that in the original and the alternative kindly.
Let not my mind deny the thought of God. I will not let my mind deny my awareness of perfect love.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I like it actually. I mean, as I've been practicing it today, I find it's very useful when if a negative thought comes up, it just helps me lift above it.
Yeah, it's a corrective mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah.
I will not let my mind deny my awareness of perfect love. So the thought of God, I think that's quite abstract. What does that actually mean? So if we translate that as awareness of perfect love, it's much more understandable, practical. Okay, so yes, if I'm fearing, if I'm angry, if I'm upset in any way, I've denied my awareness of perfect love. That's obvious. I've denied the thought of God. But it's very practical in my own awareness. It's not the problem with thoughts of God is it can be quite abstract and tend to be externalized. Well, I've got to remember, God somewhere out there. No, it's just my own awareness, my own true awareness of perfect love is what I'm denying. right now by believing in this thought and thinking these thoughts and emotion and feeling these emotions. So this is a corrective mechanism saying, well, I'm not going to let that happen. I will not let my mind deny my awareness of perfect love. And that just, resets, it brings the illusion to the truth. And you recognize then that, that whatever thoughts and emotions you've been experiencing aren't real. And there's a natural letting go. And that's what these lessons are designed to help you do, to actually let go of the negative thoughts of the ego as and when they arise. So pretty straightforward, but I think, that awareness of perfect love is really what to recognize that that's what you're denying whenever you indulge in any of these kinds of thoughts and emotions. We go back to the map of consciousness. If you're in any kind of lower state, below the level of 200 on this scale of consciousness, then you're denying the awareness of perfect love. So anything, shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, and even these, although these are, the difference with positive is although they're not the full Monty, they're not pure formless awareness of perfect love, they are leading you there. They're positive because they're leading you in the right direction. And so the Holy Spirit is now guiding you through these states and through these levels back home. And that's why they're positive, because now you're going in the right direction rather than the wrong direction. And that's what distinguishes them as positive. Although they're not absolute truth, they are steps in the right direction to the ineffable awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love. David Hawkins called it pure consciousness. We call it pure formless awareness of perfect love. Maslow called it transcendence. Whatever you want to call it, it's the same ultimate state, which we can attain, and masters and mystics through the ages have attained to this state. So it is possible, we know, and that leads you directly into heaven. And at that point, you actually are in heaven. Heaven is here now in your awareness. Okay, and then just read John, if you can read the kind of sandwich idea, I call it, because it's what frames these lessons, the review lessons. God is but love, and therefore so am I.
So
Just this.
yeah, okay. God is but love. God is but love, and therefore so am I. Alternatively, my source is only love, and therefore so am I.
Yeah. So when you say that second, my source is only love, and therefore so am I, does that do anything for you? Do you feel anything different from God is but love, and therefore so am I?
Actually, I find it more powerful with God. Actually,
Yeah, interesting.
there's something a bit more solid about it for me.
Yeah, well, this is why we do the original and the alternative. It's like, so both versions are there, and use whichever version. And the alternative version is really saying, well, there's another perspective on this. There's another way of interpreting this that might be helpful. I mean, Lynn was like, oh yeah, God, that makes a lot more sense. My source is only love. But she had some issues with God because God didn't answer her prayers when she was a child. So then we have a misperception of God, and that often interferes with the deeper experience that these words can bring. So then just change the language. Okay. So Elaine, if you can read the second one, I'm entrusted with the gifts of God.
I am entrusted with the gifts of God, or I am entrusted with the gifts of of perfect love. So God is but love, and therefore so am I. Or my source is only love, and therefore so am I.
Okay, so thoughts on the review idea. I'm entrusted with the gifts of God or of perfect love.
Yeah, both are nice. Yeah, I like both of them. So the gifts are, well, yeah.
Well, what we've discussed, the true gifts are love, peace, joy. It's a state of mind, a state of being. It's an awareness rather than
Yeah,
material
yeah.
gift,
Mm.
money, or anything else that this world can offer. The true gifts of perfect love are these states of awareness, as shown in David Hawkins's map of consciousness: love, joy, peace, and ineffable bliss. Those are the gifts which it holds out to us if we will, follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And those make anything in the world pale into insignificance. So, in worldly terms, people think that by getting something, let's say you're in desire, you think that you buy something, you acquire something, you achieve something, you get another job, you go into another relationship. The implication, the ego is saying, well, when you do that, you're going to go into a better state, i.e., a higher state of awareness. And that's why you desire the thing, but it's always attached to something external to you. So temporarily, if let's say you won $1 million or £1 million in the lottery, temporarily you might get really excited and you might go into optimism. But that's a temporary state. It was induced by the external, so it's unlikely you'll stay there. And they do see that actually in lottery winners. Just as an aside, related to the example, that a lot of the time these lottery winners, if they're not at the right level of consciousness, they're still mired in the negativity. They lose it within a few years. They've lost it all, and usually a lot of heartache goes with it because when you have that kind of money, then everyone kind of is your best friend, and everyone sponges off you, and they end up wasting it and spending it. And the one guy I think lost he bought his son some expensive car, and then his son crashed the car and died, and I mean, it's a disaster because you're at the wrong level of awareness. They hadn't actually got to that level themselves. So, clearly, anything external isn't going to do it. That's the teaching. You've got to do it internally by correcting your own mind. That's the process of letting go. And spiritual practice, disciplining yourself to do spiritual practice is what helps you climb the ladder. Now, if you're established at a state of optimism, and then you stay at that state and you operate at that state, you act at that state consistently, then things can manifest. So let's take an example in practical terms. A guy like Richard Branson, I would say for a lot of his life, he operated at a state of optimism. Really willingness, really hopeful, quite inspiring, positive intention. And then because he's established at that state energetically, he manifests a company like Virgin, and all this stuff happens around him, and it makes a lot of money. But that took, there was years of consistent optimism that allowed that to happen. It wasn't that's something that he won the lottery and then suddenly he's optimistic. No, a friend of mine once said, "Well, I'd do this if I won the lottery. I'd start my own business if I won the lottery." I'm like, "Well, you're never gonna start your own business then, are you? Because you're making it dependent on something external, and you need that security. And probably if he won the lottery, he would never have done it because he would have gone, well, I don't need to now. I can just invest the money and live with it. I don't need to start my own business." Whereas the optimistic person says, no, I will do this because I believe even in the face of the difficulties that the ego engenders in this world, I'll have faith, and I'll consistently have faith, and I'll operate at that level. And then you see that starting to manifest as within, so without. If you look at integral model, shows it quite well. So if you go into an optimistic state of mind, these levels, these concentric rings are like the levels of the map of consciousness. So if you raise yourself up from fear into optimism, you go up several levels, And then on the external, in the objective world, that reflects. And you start to see different results, objective results, and potentially interobjective results. So in Branson's case, he's created a whole system called Virgin, and there's a whole company and systems that have manifested coming from his internal state of optimism, which is how manifestation really works. It's a reflection rather than I need this to be happy. So I could say it's just a reflection or extension of your internal state of mind. So as within, so without. And when you understand that law, then miraculous manifestation becomes quite easy because it happens naturally by establishing yourself at that state and then acting accordingly. And often the action becomes your affirmation that, yes, I am at that state. So instead of doubting and fearing, you consistently act in an optimistic way that has faith behind it. Then over time that starts to manifest. Okay, so that's just a little aside on integral model and the map of consciousness and how they relate and how it's all tied. And can you see the depth of these teachings? If we go into all these models and you look at it, you see that it's all supported. The course is teaching all of this. It's all embedded in these lessons. So when you practice the lessons, you're practicing all of this. We go into it in the sessions to make it a bit more explicit. Okay, so any other thoughts on this?
No, that's clear. Clear.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Yeah.
So let's I know what happens if we meditate. That's the end of the session afterwards. So we could do that if you both want to end it at about 9:20, or we can go into some text reading, which is called The Fear to Look Within. Today's text is. Should we do the text? Let's see, how long is this one? And then we can do a meditation at the end if we have time. Anyone wants to do that? Yeah, not too bad. 8 paragraphs, eight shortish paragraphs. So should we do that?
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's just start a new recording. Okay, so this one is called The Fear to Look Within, section 4 of chapter 21. We're on to. So I think let's we've experimented with this, John. One person reads the original and then the other person reads the alternative line. So you read the original, maybe Elaine reads the alternative. See how that works out.
Yeah. Okay. The Holy Spirit will never teach that you are sinful.
The remembrance of perfect love will never teach me that I am sinful.
Errors he will correct, but this makes no one fearful.
It will correct errors, but this makes no one fearful.
You are indeed afraid to look within and see the sin you think is there.
I am indeed afraid to look within and perceive the sin I think is there.
This you would not be fearful to admit.
But I am not fearful to admit this.
Fear in association with sin, the ego, deems quite appropriate and smiles approvingly.
The belief in separation deems fear in association with sin quite appropriate and smiles approvingly.
It has no fear to let you feel ashamed.
It has no fear to let me feel ashamed.
It doubts not your belief and faith in sin.
It does not doubt my belief and faith in sin.
Its temples do not shake because of this.
Its miscreations do not shake because of this.
Your faith that sin is there but witnesses to your desire that it be there to see.
My faith in sin is there only witnesses to my desire that it still be there to perceive.
Number
This
10.
merely seems to be the source of fear.
And this merely seems to be the source of fear.
Okay, then Elaine, if you can read that in the alternative from the top.
Yeah. The remembrance of perfect love will never teach me that I am sinful. It will correct errors, but this makes no one fearful. I am indeed afraid to look within and perceive the sin I think is there, but I am not fearful to admit this. The belief in separation thinks that fear in association with sin quite appropriate and smiles approvingly. It has no fear to let me feel ashamed. It does not doubt my belief and faith in sin. Its miscreations do not shake because of this. My faith that sin is there only witnesses to my desire that it remains there for me to perceive. This merely seems to be the source of fear.
Okay, so thoughts on that?
I was just saying this, remembrance of perfect love will never teach us that we're sinful. It'll correct the errors. And so we're not going to be fearful. But we are afraid to look within. But we're not fearful to admit this. So the belief in separation thinks that the fear in association with sin quite appropriate and smiles approvingly.
So sin seems to be the source of fear. If we look at that, let's have a look at our sentence to hell diagram. So you have the idea of sin, and sin demands punishment. Sin and guilt demand punishment, and so then fear is the result. False expectation of punishment appearing to be real. And he's just highlighting that relationship. He's saying you fear to look within, but actually don't, because if you look at all this, honestly, there's no fear. You just see a delusional system that actually has no basis for any kind of reality in your mind. So this merely seems to be the source of fear. Faith is the only witnesses to my desire that remains there for me to perceive. This merely seems to be the source of fear, but it's not really, because sin doesn't exist, and therefore neither does fear. It's all illusory. It's made up. Okay, so happy with that? Any thoughts, comments, or questions on that, Elaine or John? We can go to number 2.
Yeah.
Remember
that.
John, do you want to switch it around now? You read the alternative.
Remember that the ego is not alone.
I must remember that the belief in separation is not alone.
Its rule is tempered and its unknown enemy, whom it cannot even see, it fears.
Its rule is tempered, and it fears its unknown enemy, which it cannot even see.
Loudly the ego tells you not to look inward, for if you do, your eyes will light on sin and God will strike you blind.
Loudly the belief in separation tells me not to look inward, for if I do, I will perceive sin and God will strike me blind.
This you believe, and so you do not look.
I believe this, and so I do not look within.
Yet this is not the ego's hidden fear, nor yours who serve it.
Yet this is not the belief in separation's hidden fear, nor mine who serve it.
Loudly indeed the ego claims it is, too loudly and too often.
Loudly indeed the belief in separation claims it is, too loudly and too often.
For underneath this constant shout and frantic proclamation, the ego is not certain it is so.
For underneath this constant shout and frantic proclamation, the belief in separation is not certain it is so.
Beneath your fear to look within, because of sin, is yet another fear, and one which makes the ego tremble.
Beneath my fear to look within, because of sin, is still another fear, and one which makes the belief in separation tremble.
Okay. So, John, if you read in the alternative from the top.
Yeah. I must remember that the belief in separation is not alone. It's true, its rule is tempered, and it fears its unknown enemy, which it cannot even see. Loudly, the belief in separation tells me not to look inward. For if I do, I will perceive sin and God will strike me blind. I believe this, and so I do not look within. Yet this is not the belief in separation's hidden fear, nor mine who serve it. Loudly indeed, the belief in separation claims it is, too loudly and too often. For underneath this constant shout and frantic affirmations of its existence, the belief in separation is not certain it is so. Beneath my fear to look within, because of sin, is still another fear that makes the belief in separation tremble.
Okay. What's on that?
Well, it's saying that our normal egoic self is very frightened to look within, and we play all sorts of games to avoid looking within. Because we are frightened of confronting our fear.
So we design a world where there's all these distractions. You can distract yourself endlessly and avoid looking within. It's why you mentioned that 99-year-old who doesn't want to be alone. Doesn't want to be alone because she fears to look within.
Mm.
And someone else there distracts her, and then she can engage in a conversation, and she doesn't have to look within. And people go to amazing lengths to avoid just sitting quietly, being still on their own, because if you do that, you got to look within. You got to confront your fears, and that's not easy to do. Okay, So, anything else? I perceive sin and God will strike me blind. So again, let's go to the metaphysics of that. If we believe in guilt and sin, because we've destroyed God, love, oneness, pure formless awareness, then we must invent a concept of a fearful, wrathful, vengeful, and separate God that's outside of us, that is going to enact the punishment we believe we deserve. Can you see how that concept of God, which is we see in the traditional monotheistic religions? So Judaism had it, traditional Christianity, Islam, the Eastern traditions tend not to, because they focus more on awareness. They focus more on an inner experience. And so they haven't got this concept of a fearful, wrathful, vengeful God, as much as the monotheistic religions. But if you really, and notice the monotheistic religions really do emphasize the guilt. The Catholic guilt trip is well known. So you've got to go to confession every week, and the doctrine of original sin. You're a sinner, and you're born into sin, and we've all we've all sinned, and that's just how it is. And then the concept of a fearful and wrathful and punishing God is inevitable. So that's just a part of the ego's delusion. And when someone like Yeshua challenged that, he went into the Judaic system and said, no, this isn't true. They crucified him. They said, no, this is blasphemy, because this God of the traditional God of guilt and sin and fear is correct and right, and what you're doing is undermining that, which is exactly what he was doing. He was saying that's all false. Actually, there is no sin, and there is no vengeful, wrathful God. God is only love, as his disciple John, recorded. That was his key teaching. God is only love, i.e., this loving awareness transcends all this. Okay, so there's some of the metaphysics of the course coming in, and it's always useful to refer back to that diagram just so you see where all of this stuff originates from in this metaphysical theory, and where this diagram is an amalgamation of the entire teaching of the course, particularly the text. That's where it comes from. Okay. So happy to move to number 3.
Yeah.
Let's switch it back. So, John, if you can read the original and then name the alternative kindly.
What if you looked within and saw no sin?
Yeah. I can't see. Oh, yes, I can.
Yeah.
What if I looked within and perceived no sin?
The fearful question is one the ego never asks.
This fearful question is one the belief in separation never asks.
And you who ask it now are threatening the ego's whole defensive system too seriously for it to bother to pretend it is your friend.
And I ask it now are threatening my separate self's whole defensive system too seriously for it to bother to pretend it is my friend.
Those who have joined their brothers have detached themselves from their belief that their identity lies in the ego.
Those who have joined their companions have detached themselves from their belief, and their identity lies in the belief in separation.
A holy relationship is one in which you join with what is part of you in truth.
An innocent relationship is one which I join with what is part of me in truth.
And your belief in sin has been already shaken. Nor are you now entirely unwilling to look within and see it not.
And my belief in sin has already been shaken, nor am I now entirely unwilling to look within and avoid perceiving it.
And from the top, the alternative.
Yeah, just put it down. When, if I looked within and perceived no sin, this fearful question is one the belief in separation never asks. And I who ask it now am threatening my separate self's whole defense system too seriously for it to bother to pretend it is my friend. Those who have joined their companions have detached themselves from their belief that their identity lies in the belief in separation. An innocent relationship is one which I join with what is part of me in truth, and my belief in sin has already been shaken, nor am I entirely unwilling to look within and avoid perceiving it.
Okay. What's he
So,
saying in that one?
well, it's now they're considering to look within and then perceive no sin. The question is one the belief in separation would never ask. So if we do ask, oops, there we go. I'm glad. Yeah. So when we do ask, it's threatening our separate selves defense system very seriously. Yeah.
So we go into this and we go, well, actually, am I really guilty? Am I really sinful? And we question that. And we start realizing, well, actually, maybe I'm not. There is no sin. And there is no guilt. I'm not guilty for anything. I'm totally innocent. It threatens the ego's system of defense severely. And we saw that, with Yeshua's teaching. He came into the world. He threatened the traditional Judaism, which believed in guilt and sin, very seriously by saying, well, your sins are forgiven. They said that's blasphemy. You can't say that. No one can say that. He said, well, the Son of Man has power to forgive sins. We must all let go of the idea of sin in order to awaken to the I am presence. And then he said, I am one with the Father, and the Father is one with me. And they thought that was the ultimate blasphemy because it denies that guilt and sin are real. See, because if you're one with your source, then you've never separated. Then you're not guilty for anything because you haven't destroyed God. You've just acknowledged that you're one with Him, and sin disappears. And so that teaching, completely rocked the foundation of Judaism, and they felt that they, as a defense of their deluded system, that they had to crucify him in order to defend their system, which is what happened. But he resurrected to show that guilt and sin and the inevitable death that it leads to are not reality. That there is this transcendent awareness, which is life, eternal life, that transcends it, is more powerful. Sorry, we need to go back here into. Okay, and then he talks about the innocent relationship. It's one in which I join with what is part of me in truth. So I join with my true awareness, which is I see in my companion, and that again rocks my belief in sin. So let's say, how this plays out in practice. Let's say someone is behaving unconsciously. They're maybe judging, criticizing, attacking, being unpleasant, and I forgive that. Say I'm letting go of any negative thoughts and emotion, any negative reaction to that. Then what I'm saying is sin isn't real. I'm denying sin as it's manifesting in my experience. I'm just denying it. And that's very powerful when you do that. And that's what forgiveness does. It undoes this belief in sin and the ego as identity as a result. You're saying, the ego is going to be rocked by this and shaken. So, be prepared for resistance because it's not going to just go away without a fight. Okay, happy with that? Number 3. Any comments or questions on that?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Move to number 4 then. So just switch it again. So Lane, if you read the original, John the alternative.
Yeah. Your liberation still is only partial, still limited and incomplete, yet born within you.
My awakening is still only partial, still limited and incomplete, yet arising within me.
Not wholly mad, you have been willing to look on much of your insanity and recognize its madness.
Being not now wholly mad, I have been willing to look on much of my insanity and recognize its madness.
Number 3, Elaine.
Oh, sorry, yes, yeah. Your faith is moving inward past insanity and on to reason.
John?
Yes, sorry. And what my reason tells me now, my separate self.
Skip that one. My faith is.
Okay. My faith is moving inward past insanity and on to reason.
And what your reason tells you now, the ego would not hear.
And what my reason tells me now, my separate self does not want to hear.
The Holy Spirit's purpose was accepted by the part of your mind the ego knows not of.
The remembrance of perfect love's purpose was accepted by the part of my mind that belief in separation does not know of.
No more did you.
Neither did I.
And yet this part with which you now identify is not afraid to look upon itself.
And yet this part with which I now identify is not afraid to perceive itself truly.
It knows no sin.
It knows no sin.
How otherwise could it have been willing to see the Holy Spirit's purpose as its own?
Otherwise, how could it have been willing to accept the remembrance of perfect love's purpose as its own?
Okay. And then from the top, John, in the alternative, please.
Yeah, my awakening is still only partial, limited and incomplete, yet arising within me. Being now not wholly mad, I have been willing to look on much of my insanity and recognize its madness. My faith is moving inward, past insanity and on to reason. And what my reason tells me now, my separate self does not want to hear. The remembrance of perfect love's purpose was accepted by the part of my mind the belief in separation does not know of. Neither did I. And yet this part with which I now identify is not afraid to perceive itself truly. It knows no sin. Otherwise, how could it have been willing to accept the remembrance of perfect love's purpose as its own? So it's just saying here that we are transitioning now from being totally totally wrong-minded to align ourselves with spirit, and it's only partial, but there's no going back now we have taken that step.
Yeah, so we're still not, fully awakened, but we're awakening. It's part of a journey. And I'm now identifying more and more with the part that knows no sin. That says, well, We look at that. Says, well, maybe I'm not guilty. Maybe I'm not sinful. Because I never separate. How can I be sinful and guilty if I never separated from my source? If my awareness is still there and I can experience that, and what am I guilty for? I couldn't destroy that awareness. It's still there. And that's what happens when you look within and you come into contact with this pure formless awareness of perfect love, as we call it. Naturally, the guilt and sin drops away. Well, why am I guilty? I can't be guilty for the sin of destroying this if it's there, because I'm aware that it's aware. I'm now aware that it's there, which is so simple and obvious. We think, well, how could I have been so deluded for so long? But what the ego's done is covered over that awareness with all of its egoic machinations of sin and guilt and fear and accusation, blame and attack and special relationships and the victim identity and the limitation, lack, loneliness, suffering, and death. All of that's just designed to cover over this awareness, so you're not aware of it, and you continue to believe that you actually have destroyed it. And then the world makes a lot of sense. You understand why we have a world the way we do, because it's designed to keep covering this over and to show you that love isn't here, that actually what's real is the separate self and the guilt and the sin and the fear and the attack and the all of its consequences, and that's what the world shows you, and that's why the world is the way it is. And when you start understanding that, then you start awakening. So okay, I'm starting to finally understand why the world is such a mess and why it doesn't work. And once I understand that, I can truly make the choice to let it go. Say, I don't want this. This is insane. It makes no sense. It has no reason behind it. It has no purpose. It has no value. And I start to exercise this higher function of reason. He's talking about reason tells you, well, look at that. I mean, that's a direct correlation with the map of consciousness. Reason, high-level understanding, abstract understanding the metaphysics of this. Which is we could call wisdom in this world, starts to create a meaning out of the meaningless. And that sets us up for these experiences of love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. But without that higher level reason, you're not going to understand enough to experience love, joy, and peace. So why most people, never get there, because you have to have understood on a higher level. And that's exactly what the mind training does. And notice the process is forgiveness leads to the understanding, the reason, which then leads to the higher experiences of love, joy, peace, and the ineffable bliss of enlightenment. That's exactly what the Course is teaching. Forgiveness or letting go leads to this higher understanding equals reason, and that prepares you for the coming of grace, which is love, joy, peace, and the ineffable bliss, ultimately, of pure formless awareness. And this is coming from an entirely different path. It's nothing to do with the Course in Miracles. This was David Hawkins, but really, really similar. And you do start to see that in all these paths that they're really saying the same thing. They're just saying it in a slightly different way, but it's the same underlying truth. Okay. Any other thoughts on number 4?
No, it's good.
Yep, good.
Okay, number 5, let's switch it again.
So this part has seen your brother and recognized him perfectly since time began.
This part has perceived my companions truly and recognized them perfectly since time began.
And it desired nothing but to join with him and to be free again as once it was.
And its desires only to join with everyone and be free again as once it was.
It has been waiting for the birth of freedom, the acceptance of release to come to you.
It has been waiting for the birth of freedom and for me to accept my release.
And now you recognize that it was not the ego that joined the Holy Spirit's purpose, and so there must be something else.
And now I recognize that it was not my separate self that joined the remembrance of perfect love's purpose, and so there must be something else other than it.
And now you recognize, oh, hang on. Think not that this is madness.
I will not think that this is madness.
For this your reason tells you, and it follows perfectly from what you have already learned.
For my reason tells me this, and it follows perfectly from what I have already learned. And from the top, this part has perceived my companions truly, and recognized them perfectly since time began, and its desires only to join with everyone and be free again, as once it was. It has been waiting for the birth of freedom, and for me to accept my release. And now I recognize that it was not my separate self that joined the remembrance of perfect love's purpose, but so there must be another else other than it. I will not think that this is madness, for my reason tells me this and follows perfectly from what I have already learned. So
What's on that?
it's just getting closer. There's less doubts. And it wants to join with everyone and for them to be free. It's been waiting a long time, and for us to accept our release. But now we recognize that it wasn't our separate self that joined the remembrance of perfect love's purpose. So there must be something else, and not think all of this is madness.
But something starts to dawn on us, doesn't it? The more we go into this path, the more we go, there is something else. There must be something else. And that something else is speaking to me, and that something else is calling me. That's facilitating all kinds of miracles in my life and synchronicities. And so that, it must be there. I'm experiencing it, seeing the effects of it. And my reason says, well, then this presence must be there, although it's not tangible. This presence, this essence, this awareness, whatever you want to call it, must be there because I'm seeing its effects more and more. My reason tells me that it follows perfectly from what I've already learned. So all of my learning leads me to this awareness that, yes, this presence that I've previously denied must be there. In fact, it's the only thing that's reality. The covering over it, the illusions are not reality. This is reality. And I become more and more sure of that, more and more certain, more and more established in that. And that's the awakening process. The more established I become in that awareness, the more awakened I am, and the less the ego has a hold on my mind. And that's the process that he's taking us on through this course. That's the journey of awakening. Okay, any other thoughts on that? Questions, John?
No, it's good.
Okay, so there's no inconsistency. Paragraph 6, Elaine, if you can read the original, John in the alternative.
There is no inconsistency in what the Holy Spirit teaches.
There is no inconsistency in what the remembrance of perfect love teaches.
This is the reasoning of the saying.
This is the reasoning of the saying.
You have perceived the ego's madness and not been made afraid because you did not choose to share in it.
I have perceived the belief in separation's madness and not been afraid because I did not choose to share in it.
At times it still deceives you.
At times it still deceives me.
Yet in your saner moments, its ranting strikes no terror in your heart.
Yet in my saner moments, its ranting strikes no terror in my heart.
For you have realized that all the gifts it would withdraw from you, in rage at your presumptuous wish to look within, you do not want.
For I have realized that I do not want all the gifts it wants to withdraw from me in rage at my presumptuous wish to look within.
For I have realized that I do not want all the gifts it wants to withdraw from my rage at my presumptuous wish to look within.
You've just done that one, Elaine.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then
sorry.
it's,
Yeah,
a few
sorry.
remaining trinkets.
Yeah, sorry, yes. A few remaining trinkets still seem to shine and catch your eye.
A few remaining trinkets still seem to shine and catch my eye.
Yet you would not sell heaven to have them.
Yet I do not want to exchange the state of pure formless awareness for them. So from the top, there is no inconsistency in what the remembrance of perfect love teaches. This is the reasoning of the saint. I have perceived the belief in separation's madness and not been afraid because I did not choose to share in it. At times it still deceives me, yet in my saner moments its ranting strikes no terror in my heart. For I have realized that I do not want all the gifts it wants to withdraw from me in rage at my presumptuousness, at my presumptuous wish to look within. A few remaining trinkets still seem to shine and catch my eye. Yet I do not want to exchange the state of pure formless awareness for them.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of it's kind of going, as this section moves on, it's kind of going through if you see it in a linear way, progress to enlightenment. And at this stage, we are remembering that we see spirit as entirely consistent. We may fall off the wagon every now and again and make mistakes, but that's not the big deal that it used to be.
A few remaining trinkets. So he's saying you might still have some attachments, in other words, in this world, whatever those may be, still seem to shine and catch my eye. You might still, be attached to form in some way, bodies, material stuff. But okay, let's look beyond that. Although you're not perfect, yet you've made a decision that you do not want to exchange, to sell heaven, or to exchange the state of pure formless awareness for them. You start realizing that they are the substitute for this beautiful state of pure formless awareness, which you've started to experience more and more, and you don't want to substitute for it. You're not going to do that anymore.
I think number 6 is interesting. For I have realized that I do not want all the gifts it wants to withdraw from me in rage at my presumptuous wish to look within.
And that's, we talked about the path of awakening. Let's go back to our email for today. That quote really speaks to this, doesn't it, from the Manual for Teachers. Maybe read it again, John, if you want.
First, they must go through what might be called a period of undoing. This need not be painful, but it usually is so experienced. It seems as if things are being taken away, and it is rarely understood initially that their lack of value merely being recognized. How can lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where he must see things in a different light? He is not yet at a point at which he can make the shift entirely internally. And so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. When the teacher of God has learned that much, he goes on to the second stage.
Which is exactly what he's saying here, isn't he? Saying you may have still some attachments, but yet when you realize what they are, you realize you don't want to exchange the state of pure formless awareness for them, and you're willing to let them go. But I do not want all the gifts it wants to withdraw from me. So that's often what happens. You know, so think about it. If you're going on a spiritual path, so often this happens. The first thing that starts happening is you start losing things in the world. And this is where, you know, a lot of people get discouraged and they go, well, you know, this is all supposed to be good, and it's not. I'm just losing stuff. So, you know, I'll just revert back to my ego's plan. But actually, you've realized the true realization, the learning is that I don't want these gifts. So it wants to take all this stuff away, but I realize that this stuff's meaningless and valueless. So I don't actually want it. So it doesn't matter. So I'm not bothered. And once I've learned that, then I move to the second stage. Then I'm progressing in my path of awakening. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Elaine, we can go on to number 7. And now the ego is afraid.
And now
switch it again.
and now the ego is afraid.
And now my separate self is afraid.
Yet what it hears in terror, the other part hears as the sweetest music, the song it longed to hear, since first the ego came into your mind.
Yet what it hears in terror, the other part of my mind hears as the sweetest music, the song it longed to hear since the belief in separation first came into my mind.
The ego's weakness is its strength.
My separate self's weakness is its strength.
The song of freedom which sings the praises of another world brings to it hope of peace.
The song of freedom which sings the praises of another reality brings the hope of peace to it.
For it remembers heaven, and now it sees that heaven has come to earth at last, from which the ego's rule has kept it out so long.
For it remembers the state of pure formless awareness, and now it perceives that the separation's rule has kept it out so long.
Heaven has come because it found a home in your relationship on earth.
The state of pure formless awareness has come because it found a home in my relationships on earth.
And earth can hold no longer what has been given heaven as its own.
And earth can no longer hold what has been given to the state of pure formless awareness
As its own. Okay. On the top, John, alternative.
And now my separate self is afraid. Yet what it hears in terror, the other part of my mind hears as the sweetest music, the song it longed to hear since the belief in separation first came into my mind. My separate self's weakness is its strength. is its strength. The song of freedom, which sings the praises of another reality, brings the hope of peace to it. For it remembers the state of pure formless awareness, and now it perceives that the state of pure formless awareness has at last come to earth, from which the belief in separation's rule has kept it out so long. The state of pure formless awareness has come because it found a home in my relationships on earth. And earth can no longer hold what has been given to the state of pure formless awareness as its own.
Okay, thoughts on that?
Well, as we progress down the path, we become less and less affected by the voice of the separate self. It loses its power as we align ourselves with the other true reality. And
finds a home in our relationships. I think that's a key point.
Yes, and is embedded in the way we live our key relationships.
And so that's how we learn it. When we finally start to unconditionally love people, then heaven has come to earth. We recognize that state of pure formless awareness is ours, and we're awakened, certainly awakening to that truth, which is why the Course emphasizes relationships so much. If you can't do it in your relationships, then you've still got a lot to learn. And that's all of our task, because it's theoretically it's easy, isn't it? Okay, yeah, go into it's abstract awareness, and I could just become a hermit and meditate, and but he's saying that path actually takes longer because you're not getting the triggers that arise in your relationships. So he gives us another path, and he says no, not that old way of long hours of meditation. What you're going to do is you're going to apply this in your relationship, and you're going to transform your special relationship into a holy relationship. And that requires that you practice forgiveness or letting go pretty much all the time. And so you're going to learn in the process to undo your own ego as you forgive. And that just means you're letting go of your own stuff as it arises, as it's triggered by the other person in your relationship, comes up. You let it go by recognizing that it's not true. You bring it to the truth of your true awareness, pure formless awareness. You release it, and then that process is the quickest way. You're saying that's going to undo the ego the fastest, and that's why relationships are key, and why there's such an emphasis on understanding the special relationship and transforming it into a holy one using this practice of forgiveness or letting go. Okay, makes sense?
Yeah.
Hear that one, Elaine?
Yeah.
Okay, last paragraph. So switch it again. I think is it John to read the original.
Look gently on your brother and remember the ego's weakness is revealed in both your sight.
I will perceive my companion gently and remember the belief in separation's weakness is revealed in both our perception.
What it would keep apart is met and joined, and looks upon the ego unafraid.
What it wants to keep apart is met and joined and perceives the belief in separation unafraid.
Little child, innocent of sin, following gladness the way to certainty.
I am like a little child, innocent of sin, and follow the way certainty gladly.
Be not held back by fear's insane insistence that sureness lies in doubt.
I am not held back by fear's insane insistence that certainty lies in doubt.
This has no meaning.
This has no meaning.
What matters it to you how loudly it is proclaimed?
What does it matter to me how loudly it is proclaimed?
The senseless is not made meaningful by repetition and by clamour.
Repetition and noise cannot make the senseless meaningful.
The quiet way is open.
The quiet way is open.
Follow it happily and question not what must be so.
I follow it happily and I do not question what must be so. From the top, I will perceive my companion gently and remember the belief in separation's weakness is revealed in both our perception. What it wants to keep apart has met and joined and perceives the belief in separation unafraid. I am like a little child innocent of sin and follow the way to certainty gladly. I am not held back by fear's insane insistence that certainty lies in doubt. This has no meaning. What does it matter to me how loudly it is proclaimed? Repetition and noise cannot make the senseless meaningful. The quiet way is open to me. I follow it happily and I do not question what must be true. So it's, well, we're sort of pretty much there on this paragraph. We have no doubts. We're like a child that just has certainty and follows it gladly. And we're not held back by fears and the insane insistence of doubts. They no longer have any meaning. So what does it matter at how loudly it is proclaimed? Repetition and noise cannot make the senseless meaningful anymore. So it's the quiet way is the way. And we no longer question. We have, well, that's it. We've found our way.
Yeah, so as you progress on the spiritual path, there's this quietness that starts coming, and you start, not being affected by the repetition and the noise of the senseless world, which, the ego continues and it does its thing, but it doesn't bother you anymore. It doesn't, and you recognize it all as just insane and it's meaningless noise, all just designed to distract you. Instead, you go within, you find this quietness within you, you look within, and you start going deeper and deeper within. And you find the answers there, and you find happiness and peace and love and joy and certainty within. And that's universally what happens on the spiritual path. If you look at all the spiritual paths and traditions and great masters and mystics who follow them, you see that they follow the same way. They go within, become quieter, more peaceful, and eventually, the state of revelation or samadhi results. And some of these mystics have stayed there for weeks at a time, maybe even months, in this deep state of blissful awareness, which is called samadhi in the East. And so that's what the quiet way leads to. It just starts with a daily practice of meditation. That's how it starts. Forget samadhi for most people. Just start with being quieter, calming your thoughts, and going into a quieter state, a more peaceful state regularly every day. And that's the start of the quiet way, which will take you along this path to awakening. Which is why, coming back to where we started the session, Elaine, that's why meditation is important, because it starts establishing you in the quiet way. It's all very well saying, I want the quiet way, but then you busy yourself with all kinds of stuff in the world and distractions, and the busy, noisy ego mind comes in all the time. Well, that's not the quiet way, is it?
No.
The quiet way is just sit quietly and be present. And if thoughts come up, be aware of those. And if they're not helpful, the senseless, just let them go and reestablish a connection with this deeper awareness by doing that. And then this awareness starts to grow. The more you do that, if you have a daily practice of connecting with that awareness, which is really what meditation is, then more and more you start to understand, and reason tells you, well, there must be something there because I'm experiencing it. And that's really what a mystic is. The mystic knows that this is true from their own experience. It's not some intellectual theology. It's coming from their own experience. And that's really the difference between a mystic and a theologian. The mystic knows practically from their own experience. The theologian has studied it, but they don't know it from their own experience. And that was essentially the difference between Yeshua and the Pharisees and the Sadducees in his time. They were theologians. They understood it intellectually. They had the Torah and all the books, and he understood it experientially and had therefore a deeper level of insight and wisdom, which they found very challenging. Okay, so yeah, good, nice paragraph to end on. Let's do the summary quickly. It's a fairly short summary and the key message, and then we can end with a meditation if you like, or we can end it there. So personalized summary, first paragraph. John, if you can read that one.
The remembrance of perfect love teaches me to correct my errors without fear. My belief in separation makes me afraid to look within myself, fearing the sin I think resides there. This fear is reinforced by the belief in separation, yet beneath this fear, the belief in separation itself is uncertain and trembles.
Thoughts on that?
Oh, sorry.
Suppose you have any comments or thoughts on that, John?
No, I think he's just setting the scene really and saying that the ego would have us believe in fear, but beneath, once we look at that, we realize that actually it's not based on anything.
And that's why it's important to confront your fears. So if you look at them and you spend time looking at them with true awareness, they dissipate. You go, well, actually, that fear is meaningless. It can't hold me back. It's not true. But if you fear to confront your fears and you distract yourself, you never get to that point. And you get beyond the fear, which is a primary defense mechanism of the ego. Okay. Second paragraph, Elaine. I pose a question.
I pose a question that fundamentally threatens my belief in separation. What if there is no sin within me? Those have begun to question sin and formed innocent relationships are on a path of awakening. My liberation from the belief in separation and separate self is still only partial, but I am starting to recognize the insanity of it and accept reason instead. The remembrance of perfect love's purpose is becoming clearer to the part of me that is unafraid. So just while we're on we're getting further on the journey and more confident and liberated from this belief in separation and all its insanity. And instead, we're having more faith in this remembrance of perfect love. It becomes clearer and we become less afraid.
Yeah. It's really, this is about the spiritual journey and this process of recognizing the ego is insane. You start letting go of more and more of that, and the clarity of the Holy Spirit or remembrance of perfect love starts awakening you. And you start becoming more and more convinced that this is the only way. You deepen into this practice and experience, and then you're on the path. And I think once there's kind of a point of no return. I think, Elaine, could you just go, okay, no, this is all rubbish, or John, either of you, and just go, I'll just throw the course out and I'll go back to believing what I believed 5 years ago or 10 years ago? or before you came into this teaching. You just can't, can you? It's like
You
you're
wouldn't want
permanently
to.
can't.
You just wouldn't
Yeah,
want
I mean,
to.
you couldn't, because you know enough, and why would you want to? You recognize that that's taking you in the wrong direction completely.
Yeah.
Okay, so last one, and then just the key message. So John, this part recognizes my companions.
This part recognizes my companions and longs for freedom. I realize that something other than the belief in separation has joined with the remembrance of perfect love's purpose. The remembrance of perfect love's teachings are wholly consistent and sane, helping me see through the belief in separation's deceptions and find peace of mind by following my true purpose of awakening.
Okay, any thoughts on that?
I think it's just saying that, as we follow the path, we get more and stronger in it, and as you were just saying, don't want to go back.
Yeah, so this text is really a lot about the journey. So okay, there's a journey, and these are going to be some of your experiences on the journey. But as you get further on in the journey, you realize the insanity of the ego. You become more convinced of the Holy Spirit. You become established in the quiet way, and there's only one way. You start recognizing, well, it's very simple. There's only one way that I can live my life. And that one way helps you to take you back to the oneness that you truly are, the one self. So you're collapsing the idea of choice and recognizing if there's only one way, then there's only one self and there's only one reality. And the idea of choice becomes meaningless. So when you fully surrender to God, there's only one way. The idea of choice becomes meaningless, and you've collapsed duality. There's no longer a choice. There's just the one self and the one true reality that we call God. Okay, and then just the key message. John, if you can read that.
I am guided by the remembrance of perfect love to question my belief in separation. As I accept my relationships are innocent, I move toward reason and awakening, recognizing the part of me and so my separate self's fear gives way to a quiet path I walk towards the state of pure formless awareness.
Yeah. So what's he saying there?
So he's saying that as I follow spirit and let egoic thought go, I begin to see that all my relationships are there for a reason. They're all part of my journey. There's no right and wrong. There's no need to fall into the trap of fear, especially when I look at whatever is going on and let it go.
Yeah. And so my separate self's fear gives way to a quiet path. I love that language. The quiet way, a quiet path. I walk towards the state of pure formless awareness. And we become more and more certain of that path, more and more established in it. And that's, again, if you observe over the course of human history, how people awaken in various cultures and traditions and different spiritual paths, it's the same. They end up going within, they end up on a quiet path, they move away from the world, they go within, and they tend towards a much quieter, more peaceful, and more contemplative kind of lifestyle. So that's the way he's guiding us. Okay, so yeah, any other thoughts or comments or questions on this one? Good, another good section.
Yeah,
So we
very
can
good.
get to look within. We can finish with a meditation on the lesson if you like, or we can just end it here.
I'd rather leave it there, John, because I think I will fall asleep if I do a meditation.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. Elaine, you.
Yeah, I'm fine just to leave it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So,
very good. Yeah, no, very helpful. Thank you.
yeah, good session. Nice to do some text. So thank you for joining us, John.
Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you.
All good. Yeah. And just in terms of tomorrow's session, I've got to go to Bournemouth in the late afternoon for the evening, so I can do a session tomorrow afternoon. We can start at 1:30. Does that work for either of you?
I think that's okay. Tomorrow.
Yeah. Elaine?
That's
I
okay.
might join a little bit later, but yeah, I can. Yeah.
So we started 1:30. We say 1:30.
2
I can
o'clock,
do,
maybe 2 o'clock. Yeah. Yeah. I can pop in
yeah.
for an
Okay.
hour.
Well, I'll be available from 1:30. John, join then if you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Yeah.
we'll aim to. I need to be finished by about 4:30.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Good session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
See you tomorrow.
everyone. Yeah.
Right.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Jono. Cheers,
All right.
Elaine.
Bye, John.
Namaste.
Good night.
Bye for
Namaste.
now. Bye. Okay, so that's a wrap for today. Thank you to John and Elaine for joining, making the session possible. If you enjoyed the session, you'd like to get more of these videos, do hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified whenever I go live, which is 3 or 4 times a week. You can also go to lifebuild.com. You can see that in the background. Just add a .com onto Lifebuild. And there you can subscribe to a Telegram message in which I send you the quote for the day, the teaching around it, which you saw at the beginning of the session, all comes on Telegram, along with the daily lesson from the course, including the translations, and a mini meditation or breath break to help you practice that lesson throughout the day, all free of charge. And you'll be notified whenever I go live and be given the Zoom link to join us in these calls. So you can interact and participate all at no charge. The first 3 weeks of any live interactions are also completely free. And so yeah, check it out. Join the Telegram list. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done that. And I hope to catch you on the inside soon. Thanks for watching or listening, and namaste, which means the true awakened self in me acknowledges and honors that same true awakened self in you. I'm wishing you much love, peace, and joy in that self.